Well, good evening, everyone. Whoa, welcome to the Raymore City Council work session for Monday, July the 15th. We have a couple of items on our agenda tonight. The first item being our quarterly report for economic development. I'll turn it over to Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. I will turn it immediately over to Mr. Tapp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, Mr. Fearborn. I really appreciate the time this evening. I just found out that I'm the lone item on tonight's agenda, so I'll make sure to be very precise. But I really want to take tonight to identify and highlight probably 4 or 5, maybe a handful of projects, areas that are really hitting hot right now and fast. So just try and keep it at the core 4 or 5. And then kind of talk about some general administration. So I do have a PowerPoint slide presentation. By all means, feel free to ask questions and chime in whenever you feel so desired. So it is the second quarter. Let's see, this is not working. So it's April, May, and June, which just finished. So let's go to the first project. One of the bigger ones hitting right now is what we call Raymore Gateway, and you can include Raymore Galleria North, which is basically 30-ish acres on both sides of eventual future, for now called Kentucky Bypass, to be hopefully or maybe renamed later. It's about 30 acres on both sides. We've got 2 main projects, one of which is Hercules. So I'm taking a page off of KCADC and our other regional players and partners and adding fun little names to our projects just to try and give a little sneak peek as to what it might be, but not give it all away. So Hercules is the larger piece kind of behind Firestone Belfonte's, and it's approximately 24, 25 acres if you count the pad sites up along 58. And so with that, the owners have interest from a large indoor entertainment user, and perhaps I should take a moment to kind of rewind the tape a little bit. We have 2 competing projects right now, both with a large anchor indoor user, entertainment user. So this one is on a tad smaller scale, so 50,000-ish versus 70 to 80,000 down at the Good Ranch. But it's a good problem to have, but it's also a problem. So basically what I've told them is the first one to the finish line, pretty much wins. So we'll kind of see how things transpire. This is the first, though. So this is the indoor entertainment user, about 50,000 square feet. And then a national retail developer would take that and evaluate additional commercial development, more than likely inline retail, and then some pad sites. And I've told Mr. Fearborn and the mayor this. Inline retail is evolving. Retail is evolving as a whole, but the days of throwing up, let's just say example, Belton Gateway or the Truman Corners redevelopment of just inline retail with a few pads, it's really evolving and changing. So now it's all about that experience and having a different mix of uses and different types of users where you don't just put a Bed Bath & Beyond, a TJ Maxx, and a 54th Street Bar and Grill up front. Those days are pretty much behind us. Now, I say that as a caveat, is if Raymore is going to have any mid to larger scale inline retail, it's most likely at this site because of proximity and location to Lowe's, Sam's Club, and Walmart. And then Project Renewal is the old Ryan's hard corner between Kentucky and then Kentucky Bypass signalized intersection. So like we say, it's a perfect signalized AM hard corner. So you think about everything you do in the morning when you're driving on the way to work, those are the users we're talking to there. So Hercules and Renewal, and I want to show you a map real quick. I apologize for the little bleed out a little bit of the lights, but this is Hercules. It's about, like I said, 23 acres above and about another 2-ish on the pad sites. And I forgot to mention that there's actually a specific user right now talking to city staff at an engineering public works level and Mr. Cataret's level about access and a whole bunch of other things that we talk about development related. But one is very serious right here, and then there's 1 to 2 more pads, which is kind of surprising, but if they can do it, then that's fantastic. And then Project Renewal, again, is that redevelopment, full redevelopment of the old Ryan site. And it's important to note that I've learned that the current tenant there has not necessarily been making rent payments. So that really infuses interest and sparks a fire under Realty Income Corporation. So we've really, really good job of partnering with them. We did a concept plan. We've got 2 development groups looking at this and working with them.
Matt, if you wouldn't mind talking about the development players for this area, just and the intricacies of the TIF.
Definitely. So like I mentioned on renewal, we have 2 development groups that are talking to Realty Income Corporation. They may partner, they may not. Realty Income has done their own development. They might do it themselves. A lot of times they defer to the locals and say, hey, you guys know the market, you know what will work here. So that's that one. And then up here is the existing owner of Raymore Galleria. And then, like I mentioned, whether they do the entertainment user or this national retail developer does. The other issue, that again, there's so many different wrinkles to economic development. So when you drive by a site, you know, why is nothing happening there? Well, there's a lot of things not on the ground that are behind the scenes. And one of those, as Mr. Fearborn hinted at, is there's an existing TIF, Galleria TIF boundary right about here. And so it kind of, well, it doesn't kind of, it really does affect any new developers interested in the area, because those future revenues from property tax and sales tax are already dedicated or outlined for a existing TIF. And so you have to negotiate that out if you want to try and capture those TIF revenues. If not, it really does ultimately boil down to where are the registers. So wherever the point of sales are tends to be where the TIF revenue streams from. So that's a huge wrinkle and challenge tied to this site. But luckily the current owner or owners are involved, and so one way or another we'll figure it out. But what's more than likely going to happen when this happens is a new TIF would then layer behind it. And so the Galleria would remain, and then a new TIF would be in existence. Councilmember Townsend.
In your statement, that if the structure straddles the TIF.
Make sure you use your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. So in your statement, if the structure straddled the TIF boundary, but the registers was in the TIF area, then that would dictate, or vice versa? Well, okay. It just,
For the most part, yes, yeah.
Interesting.
I don't want to answer for Gilmore and Bell, they would know for sure, but is my understanding that it really, truly, ultimately boils down to where are the registers and where are those sales occurring. So,
cool. Thank you.
yep. And so that's the first project that's really hitting hard and heavy. The next one I wanted to highlight is just down 58, and it's the infamous Willowwind Square. We all know it. We love it. We love the potholes driving through it. So there, as I mentioned in my last quarterly report, we are actually talking to a specific developer, and the developer has, I'll go ahead and move forward. The developer has, and it's kind of hard to see, but there's 2 pad sites, one here and one here. Those are currently under contract. The number 1 here is owned by the church across the street, and this was going to be a magic walk that never happened, and so they own that piece. And so they have contracts down on those 2, we're very, very close. They are currently in negotiations with the existing owners of the center itself, and they've had so much interest by users that I feel confidently or very strongly that there's going to be spillover down to the other side of 58 Highway. And so we're really thinking long and hard about this corner user we all know about that's going through right now approvals at the city, but maybe there's some additional pads and some other retailers that can happen there. And we are also currently negotiating or collaborating with that developer on, what does that incentive package look like? What could the city potentially be involved with to help stimulate or spur activity on these 2 sites? And so I'm sure that'll be coming your way sooner rather than later, and that's why I feel very confidently the TIF Commission will have a meeting in the next probably 6 months if things go as the way we see it. And we are also talking to the owner of the Orshlands building, potentially expanding the TIF district out to there. So we'll see. There is a contract down. They will not disclose exactly what their plans are for that building. So we'll kind of see if they want to join in on the TIF and if it makes sense to be part of the overall TIF district. So more to come on that. So the previous slide is existing conditions, kind of highlighting the number of parcels. And then the next slide, I think I shared this the last quarterly report, but This is the concept plan, very high level, that staff and I worked on. Mr. David Gress, our planner, is very, very talented with graphic artists here. So the light yellow is anything new potentially. So we've got a good amount of size for pads, and then the dark yellowish orange color is existing, and trying to maintain as much of that as possible, really give it a super nice facelift, and really make it the crown jewel it should be and will be. So with this, though, it's important to note that when we're showing a restaurant anchor back here, it's a little bit challenging once you go beyond, past 58. And we've talked about this before, but there's first tier and second tier. And it's kind of challenging to get a pretty big anchor restaurant or any type of anchor user back there. But we'll see. Hopefully we can get something back there. If not, like I've shared, we've had so much interest on the pad work here that I feel strongly about spillover coming down here. The same sanitary sewer new line that would be coming up from Lofts at Fox Ridge and serving the corner user would also serve Willow Wind. And then also, Willow Wind does not currently have any on-site retention or detention for stormwater runoff. And so it makes a lot of sense to come together, these two areas, and work on a regional stormwater approach, probably further down on the creek, down on the south end down here, because all this runs off down that way. Next on the list, as I kind of hinted at before, is the Good Ranch and the mixed-use tract, which we call Tract 1. It is about 140 acres, highlighted in yellow on the map I'm showing. And as I mentioned, they are very close on LOI or letter of intent or a very serious commitment on a different, separate entertainment user, a little bit bigger. Would be a massive anchor user down there, along with the youth sports, the soccer, and talking to hotel developers. We're talking about professional medical office above the ground floor commercial. So we received a lot of feedback from our citizens and you all as well. We really want to see a downtown Raymore. Well, this is probably the best, largest tract. So how I often refer to it is, it's our version of Lenexa City Center, although not nearly that big. They're 240, 300 acres. This is 140. So properly scaled for a community and area our size. So right now, we are still in the mode of attracting and getting commitment from a master developer to be that maestro, as I like to say. We have a nice trumpet section and percussion and violin, but we need that maestro up front to really kind of bring it all together and make it cohesive and look right. We are also talking to a co-working developer and operator of some space above the ground floor commercial. So things are going well. We've got some really high level interest. I can only take it so far as a city official. It's not my site, it's not my property. And so we need a master developer to put a commitment down on the real estate and really pursue it hard. Then another mixed-use project that's really gaining some steam is immediately to our side yard here as we sit in City Hall. I call it Project Guidepost, but, we've referenced this the last quarterly report, but since that time, the proposed developer of this area has been working with a very substantial community partner organization that I'm really excited to potentially work with and get them here on Municipal Circle. I can't share much more, obviously, but it's a full approach of working with them on a potential voter referendum and getting the necessary funds to make it happen. Building probably won't be that size, that's large for sure, but some version thereof and in that general vicinity. And then that same developer is looking at some luxury multifamily if we can make it all work and get the parking situation right, as well as stormwater. So just want to share with you all that they've exchanged some numbers that they are starting to work with, as well as some architectural design that hopefully we can help them have a really nice picture to share with the voters and explain how exciting a project this is, and see where it goes from there. Then really quick, the Kirby site. And you all are aware that Compass, they've kind of downscaled or downsized their building as their numbers came in a little bit higher than they anticipated. So what that means is that full-scale event space and training center area will be a phase 2 of the project. So right now it's the core medical, dental, and then behavioral health, and about 125 employees. So they're probably going to add about another 50, 70 there. We've heard, and I've talked to them, haven't talked to them in a while, but I've heard probably late summer into early fall for a site plan submittal and building plan submittal and moving it forward. So we're excited about that, but in front of that is the 4.5 acres on the corner, and we've been working with the property owner on some conceptual plans, and this is actually changing as we speak, kind of evaluating, does it make sense, or could it work to have more of an L shape to come down, to have a little bit more frontage on 58 for a multi-tenant. So just to kind of show and exhibit that we really do work intimately with property owners on concept plans and trying to convince them to do certain things that are probably more marketable and more advantageous for them now and into the future. I don't need to talk about Timber Trails. The old filling station, gas station at Pine, as you all may recall, the new luxury duplexes are occurring east of here on my cursor. And I've talked to a number of different potential end users, as well as the building owner, they're Raymore residents, and gotten some interest for sure. I think it's a great spot where you convert the garage doors to the glass garage doors. You can roll them up in nice weather, whether it's a coffee and or a beer hall, makes a lot of sense there. So we'll kind of see it. We've gotten some bites, and it just takes a lot of moving pieces to work together, because it's a unique building where you have office space on the west side and an old garage space on the east side. So you try and maybe keep that firewall. Mayor Turnbow makes an appearance here on the slides. So Mayor Turnbow and I had the fortunate pleasure, and I really do appreciate the budget to go out to ICSC, or International Center for Shopping Centers, which is the de facto commercial real estate professional organization. It's called RECon, or Real Estate Conference, in Las Vegas. And I do believe we had over 40, almost 50,000 registrants. So tons of people. The mayor, I think, clocked his walking one year, and we walked 9 or 12 miles in one day, something like that. Just in the convention center. It blows Bartle Hall. It's like 10 Bartle Halls. But leading up to that, a lot of folks don't realize how many points of contact that I have with those retailers. So I counted it up and have a whole spreadsheet and document when I email, when I call. I counted at least 375 emails and phone leading up to the May conference, and with about 125-ish retailers. So there's quite a few. And we've got a lot of conversations, got a lot of interest. We're getting on their radar. Again, as I talk about retail, the first major hurdle is just a sheer numbers obstacle. Do you have the numbers within 3-5 miles? Yes or no? A lot of the folks, or a fair amount, we're just not quite big enough yet in our region, but we're getting there. But we have a lot of interest. So like I said, if Raymore Gateway takes off, an entertainment user like that, of that stature, changes the whole dialogue. They don't know about that yet. We don't share that information yet. So we completed about 20, give or take, Mayor can chime in, but we had about 20 good conversations, whether we walked the floor and talked to the different retailers, or we had set meetings with developers or retailers. So it's gone really well. We generated a lot of interest. And again, we've kind of directed some folks at the AEM corner where the Ryans could be redeveloped, as well as the Gateway. And then the Good Ranch, I think, will happen eventually. We just got to get those rooftops in there. Again, I'll always keep pushing. Retail follows rooftops, not the other way around. If you have green space around your retail site, it's behind the 8 ball. So we've got to fill in the green space with rooftops. And so in addition to just general retail commercial recruitment, I talked about 4 national and 1 local retailer about spaces in Raymore, or trying to get them here. So there's a lot of things happening, and I always use the analogy of the iceberg, but most folks only see the very tippy top 10% of what economic developers do, or economic development organizations do. We're still, I think, in that 90% by and large, and we're at the tail end of that 90%, but before you know it, these peaks will come up, and you'll have TIF Commission recommendations on the City Council, and you'll be seeing some projects happening. So it just takes a lot longer than, especially I or anyone else, really like to see. And then industrial real quick. Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Cadret, myself, we continue to operate as an economic development team, trying to find the very best mutually agreeable incentive package, and hopefully we get this project to you all, get it to the P&Z, or actually City Council, and get it forward. So more to come, hopefully in the next quarter for this project as well. But as you might recall, it's a proposed spec industrial development And I have heard at Southview Commerce Center in Belton, which is the new industrial, that their first, I think it's 600,000 square foot building is already leased up. So again, that reiterates how much demand there is for this industrial flex space on I-49. Let's see. And so just real quick on workforce development, which is basically the talent side or the people side of the equation. Just I want to focus on the local efforts. And I have started, the team has started initial dialogue collaborating with the Raymore Peculiar School District about what does a local workforce development program look like? What are those career pathways that we want to piggyback off with the bigger, larger private companies around us, such as Cerner, so healthcare IT, you've got the Honeywell plant, and there's a lot of different tracks we can take, and we want to make sure that we can provide the necessary program for these students to really hit the ground running. So identifying those career pathways, then you kind of build a program around that. So again, very infant stages. I think we might be starting to crawl here. So a lot more work to be done here, but Dr. Barr and Dr. Monstis, of course, and Dr. Volker, we've all had a lot of great conversations. So it's going very well. And I wanted to highlight or showcase our new website for economic development, but we have a few pieces that communications I need to work on. So I'm really, really hopeful that by the next quarterly report, I can really showcase the new updated website for Economic Development Department. And I don't think we had time to cover this. Mr. Feuerborn or Mayor, by all means, chime in if we have. But these are the flyers that I worked with on Communications Department as well as Linchpin Ideas. This is a retail perspective on the left-hand side, which you've probably seen. And then on the right-hand side is industrial. You've seen those, but the newer ones are all about telling the Raymore story. So it's a storytelling piece. And Mr. Icky and Melissa and I, we did a fantastic job with Linchpin, and they did a knockout job. This really, I've had repeated comments that this is by far the best marketing materials the city has provided, and the mayor is nodding. So retailers have expressed that and said, wow, you guys really can tell your story. But this one is all about our growth, our population growth, and we all know it, and I won't cover it too much, but you kind of see how it's laid out, trying to show that skyrocketing growth, which is what retailers like to see. And then on the left-hand side, we talk about the 10 fastest growing cities, and we're number 7, which is very decent considering we're going against cities and much, much, much larger than us. But if you look at it from a single-family building permit per capita, and this is up to 2017, we are actually number 1. So every 20, I think it's 20 people that Raymore calls home, we are issuing a single-family building permit, which is pretty crazy. So the retailers like that as well. And this is more of a retail snapshot. And so retail likes to see what are your major employers in the area. And this is, again, why I referenced the Cerner and Honeywell. Those are 2 huge behemoths that we're really fortunate enough to have within an easy driving distance of even City Hall. So I'm showing the drive time from City Hall. And so the Cerner Innovations Campus is about 13 minutes. Honeywell is even lower at 8 on not peak traffic flow, for sure. And then another key piece here really quick is our 4 focus categories we pulled out from our retail strategies work. And then you can't really see it too well because it's kind of saturated on color, but anything green here means these are dollars to be had in our market area. So which is generally about a 15, 20-minute drive time from Dean and 58. But green means good because retailers see that and see, hey, all this money is going elsewhere. Let's stop that leakage and locate in the Raymore area. So that's been a very positive effect as well. We also are participating in KCP&L's Location One Information System, which is LOIS for short. And I don't think I have time to show you, but we have a link on my website for available sites and buildings. And so whether it's a site, a real estate site that's not developed, or a building that's already up, you get a lot of information tied to that site or building. And it's been a great resource. It's cost us $0 by our friends at KCP&L, or Evergy as they'll soon be known. But yeah, that's a great service. And so with that, I believe that is the end of my PowerPoint. And I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Thank you, Matt. Good summary.
Yes,
Ms.
Mr. Mayor.
Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Matt, good job, thanks. It's always very informative. Question, we've had, seems lately, a big push for multifamily, and multifamily is not multifamily like we used to think about it. It's much different. You mentioned that retailers look at rooftops. Do they count that? I mean, do they look at that as well?
Yes, very much so.
So to grow our retail, if we grow our multifamily, that certainly falls in place with our master plan.
Already is happening. So Willow Wind has generated a lot of interest in the area because of loss at Fox Ridge. 400 units of Class A luxury apartments. Those folks have quite a bit of disposable income. So those bar and grills, those restaurants we all know, they love that. And within walking distance too. So yes, rooftops means single family, multifamily, anything that's not greenfield. And rooftops, people living there. And even better, and Councilmember Holman and I've shared a lot of times, it's not just rooftops, but it's daytime population. And so a lot of these restaurants are now not looking at just solely dinner time traffic, but also lunchtime. So we really got to try and explore and look at office and try to increase our daytime population that have folks that can come and hit the lunch spots.
Matt, who did we talk to last week? I'm trying to remember the name with that. There are some really neat multifamily, not multifamily concepts that are out there.
Right.
And this
Yes.
particular one was, for the lack of a better term, it's cluster single-family luxury homes.
It
And
was-
these
It was
things are-
eye-opening.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a lot of things, it comes from the coast or from the warmer climates in, and so I think we saw one from Arizona, I think it was. And Mr. Fearborn's right, it's really unique, where it's still single family, you still have your own single family house, but a lot of times it's like shared parking, and it's a loss at Fox Ridge lifestyle, but you have your own single family house that backs up to a green area, and or think of the amenities of Lost at Fox Ridge. So you have a clubhouse, a pool, but it's a single family development all within one tight knit community. So it was really interesting. And so it's starting to come. And we talked to some other developers about how can we make single family more appetizing to, I call it the bookends, the downsizing baby boomers and those millennials that now have kids or about to have kids or married and want to have a single family experience, but also still want to have that luxury multifamily, luxury apartment lifestyle. You know, be able to go to the pool and lounge around or go to the workout facilities. So these single-family developers and builders are already thinking about this and really catering the product to those lifestyles. So it's coming.
So a comment and a question. The first comment, you talked to Mr. Barber's question about what retailers are looking for. Obviously, your famous statement of retail follows rooftops, then we talked about multifamily, and then you talked about the additional dimension of daytime versus nighttime population, if you will. A great example of that is North Kansas City. If you were to take their nighttime population, they would be lucky to have a convenience store there. But during the day, the population swells 10, 20-fold. They have, because it's an industrial area, and therefore they bring a lot there simply off that single dynamic. So
Right.
I catch your point on that. My question is back to the Hercules project. We have a little bit of a unique scenario there because we have the northern 2/3 of that property is currently undeveloped and for sale, and roughly the middle section or the southern half of the undeveloped portion is under an existing TIF, correct? My question is there any way to restructure or nullify part of an existing TIF that has not ever been developed?
It can be negotiated out, sure. It could be an agreement with the recipients, original recipients of that TIF. And so you could negotiate that out through the real estate acquisition.
Okay, I was going to say, there would seem to be some workarounds for a developer interested in this.
Right.
Obviously, if point of sale is where you determine whether or not the TIF goes to your TIF or someone else's,
Right.
you're going to put parking on that south half of that
Yeah.
undeveloped part and,
Yes,
and put the
yes.
registers north of the line. But sometimes that can obviously be problematic. You want to make the best use of the space that you can. So
Right.
I was just curious as to what options or workarounds there might be for a developer. We touched on it a little bit. I just didn't know if that's locked in. And how much time is left on that existing TIF there, do you know?
Mr. Fearborn could probably chime in, 12 years, somewhere around there.
It activated in 2006.
So 18, yeah, 17.
There's still a little bit of time on it. There's also the possibility that because a viable developer has that southern half, that they would be as interested as anyone in establishing a new TIF area tandem to where they are, and it would more than likely be a new TIF area because they'd want the time.
And a follow-on question to that, obviously, we're in the process of or albeit early stages of developing the road, the new Kentucky Road extension. I'm assuming either that road being in there or the knowledge that that road is going in would be a big boon to developers. Less infrastructure they would have to take on themselves. It's already in place. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, sir. That's very true.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, Mr. Socko.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have a question on the Whirlwind, on the new pad sites you were showing over here, and on the northeast corner, looks like that's a light yellow new building, because they have an existing building there with about 4 tenants now. If this new thing transitioned over, are they planning on taking some of that out to rebuild those new buildings, or?
That's a great question, and that's to be determined by that
Oh, okay.
developer. There are 3 buildings here that we're not really showing existing. One here, which Dairy Queen sits right about here.
Yeah.
And then the other building here where Cheap's Liquors and Smokes is there, and then other building right about
Yeah,
here.
it comes right up there.
Yeah. And, in our concept, those 3 would be scraped, but I think that developer's evaluating all options. So all could stay, some could stay, none could stay. Depends on what their project looks like.
Okay.
And the economics, really, that's a big piece of it is,
Yeah.
in order to make the TIF, the property tax side and the sales tax work, you got to have sales tax generators and others. So yeah, that's all part of the package of reviewing it.
Okay.
Which one's Olive Garden?
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, that's true.
Don't you say that.
We decided to draw both Olive Garden and Red Lobster just for the heck of it. So those are it.
Sonia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is more about the workforce development side. And I know for several years, we talked a lot about the economic development of North Cass and kind of looking at the region more than just our city. And especially with workforce development, we hope that we're creating jobs for people in Raymore, but really we're creating jobs for people who live anywhere within commuting distance of here. So both with economic development and with workforce development, how much are we working outside of our boundaries and teaming with surrounding areas?
Great question, Council Member. And I didn't really cover it, but on that same slide, we do have a regional effort. Let me get to that. And that is led by the Cass County Corporation for Economic Development. Oh, there we go. And so that's the CCWDC. We like acronyms. But that's the countywide. And if anything in economic development spreads across city limits, or city boundaries, it is workforce development. We're all pulling talent from a lot of the same areas. And that's what especially primary employers or larger employers are looking at is how many people are within a 30-minute drive time. And so that is a more regional effort where we have all the school districts, or most of them. We have the county, we have all the cities, and then we have some private employers come in and sit around the same table and talk about what are some of the workforce development challenges. Is it a shortage? Is it the right skills? What does that look like? And how can we all partner with the Full Employment Council or fill in the blank partners? So that's more a regional effort. On the local efforts, though, that's where you really get into the trenches and figure out who we're trying to attract. What is the best workforce development program to where you can mold the workforce and keep bringing that pipeline of talent in. And of course, obviously, one of the great sources of our area is the Raymore-Peculiar School District and all the school districts of Cass County. So that's where you really want to partner on that.
Mr. Townsend, did you have your hand up earlier? No? Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Berenson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Tapp, with the pending new improvements to 58 Highway and possibly creating a spur from Raymore to 150, Would that increase any desire to develop the southeast corner of J and 58? I know we talked briefly in the past about that becoming some light industrial. Has anything changed since we last talked? Is there any interest in that property?
No, because in order to develop that property, you have to extend a new sanitary sewer from the main creek north of there to the tune of, I think we calculated $300,000 to $500,000. And so until that happens, there is no development on that southeast corner.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Matt, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate
Mayor.
it.
Thank you,
Yeah,
council
Good
members.
job. I know you've been staying busy. You've been keeping me busy, so I know you're staying busy. So next item is board appointments. I'll let you pass those out there. And these, working with Mr. Ike and with Melissa, they have put together a list of candidates for me to put forward for the council's approval. And they have some pretty good points on there that they made with regard to these individuals. I've talked to them, and so those are the ones that will be proposed for your consideration. Unless there's any questions, that's kind of it. I'll go on. Do we have anything other to
We do, sir.
discuss? Okay, go ahead.
As you all may know, we began new trash service today. Mr. Ike is now going to give you just a real quick update of how today went, and then I'm going to have an open session recommendation, suggestion to you all, and then we will be adding two items. There will be two items for closed session. One, and we can go into that when we get into there.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, sir. Always glad to report good news when it comes to trash service, and this is no exception. We knew as Constable Sanitation was starting that these would be new routes, these would be new drivers on those routes, that they had new equipment. There was going to be some kinks they needed to work out as they started these routes. However, today I am very pleased to be able to report that the yard waste route in our Monday pickup, so everyone north of 58 Highway, west of Madison, yard waste was completed at 1:30 this afternoon. The trash route number 2 was completed at 3:15 this afternoon. Trash route number 1 was completed at 5:30, and the supervisor completed sweeps at roughly the same time at 5:30. As I received this update, I also received an apology from George Constable saying that he hopes in the coming weeks they will become faster and more efficient. So to hear those times and then also to hear that they'd be becoming faster and more efficient just made my day.
Yeah, Mr. Holman.
Yeah, I happened to be in the driveway when they picked mine up today, and I assume because he took on this contract, I'm sure he had to hire additional people and get new trucks. Showed up about 9:30, and I think he'll probably be able to keep that promise, because watching him pick up mine and my neighbors, his slowest part of it was trying to figure out how to use the new arms. He was struggling with that, and obviously had not done them. He actually had to stop and back the truck up at one point. He's, like I said, you could tell, in a couple weeks, this guy's going to have this down. He's going to have done it 10,000 times. But yeah, I think they'll get there and improve on what you talked about, even though that was pretty good.
Is that it? Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Thank you. I was one that got my trash picked up today, so yay. I would imagine that some of their, obviously knowing the routes will help speed them up, but having multiple thousands of trash cans out probably didn't help the drivers as they were going down the streets, kind of locate which was the right one to pick up. So I could see why it would take a little longer.
And they actually, if there was a Jim's disposal, they picked up everything that was in the driveways. If it was in a Jim's disposal cart of any kind, whether that was a recycling cart or a solid waste cart, they tipped those into the solid waste. And the only thing that they did not pick up was if there was recycling in a City of Raymore cart, because they can't charge for that yet. But they wanted to make a, quote, clean sweep of everything so that next week when they're starting, everything's been emptied and picked up off the driveways.
if
All
they
those
had
Jim's
anything in them.
cans?
They were actually physically checking them.
They
see if there's
sent,
anything in 'em,
they
rather
sent,
than
yeah,
tipping
they
them.
sent supervisors ahead of them to lift the lids.
See if it
Yeah.
need to be tipped. Yep.
They, Mrs. Fearborn actually offered them water as they were running down the street, and they took it, and I think that they probably apologized that they couldn't stay and chat longer because it was their first day out.
Anything else?
Yes, one final thing. If we do not receive, if the council is okay with this, the mechanics of the billing are a little bit complex anyway, but for this month, because Jim's had half the month and Constable had half the month, and our citizens are confused enough, with the council's okay, it is a very low cost, I want to say just over $5,000, to just bill our customers for this month at the $12.77 rate that they've been paying, regardless of what they have. There's not going to be recycling get picked up anyway. So basically what it would mean is, instead of the increased cost for solid waste to Constable being charged for this last month, we'll just charge them for the whole month at the $12.77. We can take that out of the and some other things, maybe, out of the fines that we have assessed to Jim's disposal.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Mr. Townsend, do you have a question?
I did. On the, we still have, obviously, gym carts, and I know that was going to be a part of the discussion, just to kind of reiterate the plan for those who are curious, because I see a lot of comments on, what do I do with my cart?
We'll be talking with you all about that in just a moment.
Understood. Thank you.
The executive session. Anyone else? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to move into executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Holman.
I move that we move into executive session to discuss litigation matters as authorized by the revised statute, State of Missouri 610.021 subsection 1.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Could I have a roll call, please?
Councilman Holman,
Yes.
Councilman Barber,
Yes.
Councilman Abdelgawad,
Yes.
Councilman Berenson,
Yes.
Councilman Circo,
Yes.
Councilman Burke,
Yes.
Councilman Patterson, Jacobson. My apologies, I wasn't quite
Yes.
ready. Councilman Townsend.
Yes.
All right, we'll now go into executive session, and when we're done with that, we're done.